Spartans! What is your profession?
Okay, we're ready to do our glove mold, and the first part is to do the gel coat. So the inner mold, the silicone part of the mold that we're going to make, because it's a two-part glove mold, is going to be the Rebound 25. I like this stuff. This stuff is very practical. I've tried a lot of different silicones over the years, and from different companies. Now I've settled on the smooth-on Rebound 25 because it kind of like fills up in all the boxes of the things I need done. I do a lot of small projects, and for certain small projects it still works. If I'm doing a rotocast, single-sided mold, it works great. If I'm doing a two-sided block mold, this isn't my first choice. But for masks and helmets and large molds that need for you to peel off the sort of the skin of the mold, this stuff is great. Very resilient. Has a certain stretchy quality, but it's still pretty tough. It won't deform. Very high tear resistance. It's just practical all around, and you'll see that as we're doing the gel coat and the other coats on the piece we're going to do next. All right, let's get to it. The glove mold, all you need is a small quantity, because what you really want to do is just do a gel coat. That means just put a very, very, very thin coating everywhere, making sure that it gets into every crevice. Every detail needs to be touched by this so that you can eliminate even the slightest chance of bubbles. Now, slightest chance is kind of like a iffy word, because if you're not careful, it can still happen. And you have to move with a certain amount of rapidity, because there is a limit to what Rebound 25 takes to actually gel up. Now here's the thing, get yourself an old paintbrush, preferably something that you don't have particles on or anything, that you just use for acrylic or varnishes, whatever. And even if it's short, shorten it down a little more. What you want to do is get yourself a kind of mini chip brush. Now if you're familiar with chip brushes, they're very, very short brushes that have very stiff bristles because of the shortness. So you want to get close to that kind of effect. And I say use old paintbrushes because they're not worth much anyways once you get old. Now you don't have to go very short, you just want to be able to, when you hit it down on the surface, that it doesn't splay too much, that it actually pushes material into the crevices. And you can feel for yourself and get a feel of how short you want this. Now why am I using a tiny brush like this? Because I'm only going to apply a little amount at a time. You don't want like a big globs of them that you have to spread around. Okay? There is a certain amount of urgency, especially if there's a lot of detail, and that's why you don't mix a lot in one shot. Now here we go. And you're going to ask yourself, well, why do you use those funny little things here? These things are actually very accurate. If you put them flush to the surface, you'll get an accurate mix, because I go by volume, not weight, always. It's just like so rarely have any problems. There we go. Let's get ourselves some B. Oh, didn't prepare my mixing stick. Now we're just gonna scrape off the excess. It's a kind of by the eye thing. As long as it's flush, it'll work. And empty it into our container. There we go. Now let's bring this closer to the camera. Oh yes. You're saying, well, why are you scraping the stuff around? It doesn't matter. We're talking small amounts and small variations. It's not going to make that big a difference. But always use 2 different clean measuring spoons. You don't want to cross-contaminate when you're dipping into your containers. There we go. And there, I was going to actually, I think I might have put a little too much. I might have used should use a smaller amount, a smaller measuring, but that's okay. We'll work it out. The reason why you want a small amount is so that you want to have seems I have trouble speaking and mixing. Who knew? That you don't want to be rushing to finish it off because you don't want to waste material. So the smaller amount, you're better off having 2 small mixes and taking your time and doing the coating. Now, scrape your sides. Always scrape your sides. Not always get that tool down there on the surface, on the bottom there, and scrape that too. There is, of course, the method where you scrape it all out of this container, put it in a fresh one, and mix it a little more, and then you got great stuff. But I rarely have a problem with there being unmixed portion of it. There we go. That should be enough for now, and well, let's get started. Now, the way I like to start this particular one is start from bottom up. And I'll tell you why, because it's always easier to coat something when you can hold it. And the bottom is always the trickiest, not because it has more detail, but because you really can't get to it if you just leave it there and try to go like this. That ain't gonna work. So you got it. I get a nice coating here. Here you can like just spread it on like you would a paint. You don't have to do the stippling effect. It's such a flat surface, it's not going to matter. So now I got myself a little coating there. You can do the sides too. Now here's where it gets trickier. This is a lot of little grooves and ink, so you want to just get enough to put on the paintbrush and just go to town, getting it in everywhere. That's it. You know, take your time to do a good job, but don't linger too long either. You wanna, keep moving. Make sure you hit all the spots. If you're unfamiliar with the piece or unfamiliar with the material, it's the first time you're using this particular stuff, practice on some smaller pieces. Get a feel for it. Get a feel for how long it takes to catalyze and congeal and how much working time you really have. A little practice, especially if you're planning to use this as a mainstay of your casting abilities. You want to practice enough with it so that you become familiar. So when a piece becomes more complex or more difficult, demanding more time and concentration from you, that you can move smoothly and quickly and with a certain amount of confidence, you don't delay too often. There, you see, that's good enough. Now, we're going to concentrate. We're going to do the, let's get these little sides here. See, the reason you're doing this all is to get a nice thin coating everywhere. The thinner coating won't allow bubbles to form. So the thicker the coating, the more bubbles can be trapped. Very thin coating, near impossible. So it's a dual action of getting it into every crevice. And the end result is just, you don't want any pesky bubbles, and you want to capture every detail without any defect. You see, now here you'll notice that I'm not spreading it as much. I'm actually stippling it, which means like pressing down the bristles in a perpendicular way, or in other words, straight down. You know, because I'm more interested in getting it small amounts of this into every little crevice. This is like the foundation of your mold, so to speak. Because if you screw this part up, nothing else you do will matter. Okay? If you put a lot of defects or bubbles or don't capture every detail of your little masterpiece, then no matter how well you make all the other layers, it won't matter. Learn your material before you try being. If you're doing a mold, always think least amount. For a glove mold, the gel coat, that first thin coating. Okay? Now I've cheated a little bit and I've put some of it around and thickened up the gel coat, but just on the surfaces that are very flat, very even, that couldn't collect air in any little crevices or anything. And just so thin enough that if there is a bubble, it'll come up through the surface of that thicker coating. When you do a gel coat, you have to think, I'm only needing enough to cover the surface in the thinnest of coats, you know? And that's how you calculate what you want to do. Practice. Ladies and gentlemen, the only way you get good at making molds is practice and mistakes, which counts as practice. So now we wait, and later we'll test the stickiness. And if you can just touch it and it's tacky without removing any of the stuff on your fingers, you're good to go for the next coating. Because you want the coatings to adhere to each other as much as possible without disturbing the undercoat. So you see, if it's still a little too smushy, when you go to put the second coat, you'll be pushing the silicone around, and that's counterproductive. You want that lower layer to be solid enough that it won't that it could like wiggle a little bit but not move right off the piece, because then you're just causing defects to form, air pockets and whatever. So you want that, you know, that lower level one to be sticky so the two halves will stick, but you want to be firm enough and stiff enough that it won't move around. And that's all, you know, that's all that's happening when you're doing layers. But you really have to be careful with the first layer. All right.